161 years ago today, Christmas Day, 1861, a 19-year-old Confederate soldier named Valerius Cincinnatus Giles went out on picket duty along the Potomac River. Valerius and his two brothers from Travis County, Texas, had answered the call to arms to defend the new Confederate States of America. William, the eldest, joined the 10th Texas Infantry. Lewis had joined the 8th Texas Cavalry, Terry's Texas Rangers. And Val, the youngest, joined the Tom Green Rifles, which would become Company B of the 4th Texas Infantry, Hood's Texas Brigade. The newly formed Texas Brigade was camped at Dumfries, Virginia in the fall and winter of 1861, under the command of Brigadier General Lewis Wigfall, and they had the duty of defending against any Union incursions into Virginia across the Potomac. They also defended the artillery batteries that commanded the high ground along the Virginia side of the Potomac to enforce a blockade of the river. From his memoirs, Rags and Hope, Val Giles writes, "On Christmas morning, a detail of 20 men was sent from the 4th Texas Regiment to relieve the picket guard along the river. This detail was commanded by Lieutenant R.J. Lambert. The post assigned me was on Cockpit Point, about 100 yards from the masked battery. This battery of 4 guns was planted 20 feet back from the edge of the bluff, completely hidden from a view of the abatis of pine brush felled and stacked, with sharpened ends of the trunks pointing outward as a crude defense. From my post, I had a splendid view of the river for 2 or 3 miles in each direction. The low range of hills on the Maryland side opposite were covered with white tents and log cabins, the winter quarter of General Daniel E. Sickles' New York Brigade. The war had just fairly begun, and this was new to me. The novelty of the situation, the magnificent view before me, the river rolling majestically along between the white hills and the evergreen pines, so charmed and captivated me at first that I felt not the bitter cold. The snow was gently and silently falling, deepening in the hills and valleys, melting as it struck the cold bosom of the dark river. I had been on post but a short time when I heard the signal corps man sing out from the crow's nest high up in the sawed-off pine tree, saying to the officer in charge, "Look out, Lieutenant, a gunboat is coming down the river." I could hear the artillery officer giving orders to his men, but from my position, I couldn't see them. Looking up the river, I could see a black cloud of smoke rising above the tops of the trees. All was excitement at the battery, and I could hear the artillerymen ramming home their shells, preparing to sink the approaching boat. Directly, the steamer turned to bend the river, with volumes of black smoke pouring from her smokestacks. She was in the middle of the stream, coming dead ahead under full steam. It was really a disappointment to the fellows at the battery as well as to myself when a soldier in the crow's nest called out again, "Oh, Shaw, Lieutenant, don't shoot. She's nothing but an old hospital boat, covered over with a yeller flags." Of course, a Confederate battery would not fire on a yellow flag any more than a white one. The boat came steadily down the river until she got nearly opposite Cockpit Point, when she blew her whistle and turned toward the Maryland shore. As she made the turn, she came within 200 yards of the Virginia bank, and I could distinctly read her name on the wheelhouse. It was the old Harriet Lane, named in honor of the accomplished niece of President James Buchanan, who was the Queen of the White House during the administration of that eclectic old bachelor. After the boat had landed and the excitement was over, a melancholy stillness surrounded me. The novelty and fascination of my surroundings soon lost their charm. The lowering clouds above me and the white silence about me became monotonous, and I began to feel restless and uneasy. If you're in a forest or on a prairie on a still summer day and you will stop and listen attentively, you hear the songs of birds, the chirping of crickets, or the drowsy hum of insects. But in a piney woods in midwinter, when the earth and green branches of the trees are covered with snow, with not a breath of air blowing, the stillness is oppressive. I must have had a slight attack of homesickness, for I began to think of home and my mother and father away out in Texas, waiting and praying for the safe return of their 3 boys, all in the Army and all in different parts of the Confederacy. One in the 10th Texas Infantry at the Arkansas post, one in Tennessee or Kentucky with Terry's Rangers, and one in the 4th Texas Infantry in Virginia. While I stood my post on the banks of the Potomac, I knew I was perfectly safe from any personal danger, yet something seemed to warn me of an approaching evil. I tramped through the snow half knee-deep, although I was not required to walk my beat. I tried to divert my mind from the gloomy thoughts that possessed me, but all in vain. Suddenly I was startled from my sad reflections of home and kindred by distinctly hearing a voice. I knew my brother Lou's voice, calling my name. I turned quickly, looking in every direction, heard nothing more, and saw nothing but the white world around me and the dark river below me. He was 2 years my senior, had been my constant companion and playmate up to the beginning of the war. It was 4 p.m. of December the 25th, 1861. I was not sleeping or dreaming, and firmly believed at the time that I heard my brother calling me, but it must have been a delusion of the imagination. However, Louis L. Giles of Terry's Texas Rangers, Troop D, 8th Texas Cavalry, was mortally wounded at the Battle of Woodsonville, Kentucky, December the 17th, 1861, in the same charge in which Colonel Terry was killed. He was removed by his comrades to Gallatin, Tennessee, and died at the residence of Captain John G. Turner, a lifelong friend of my father. He breathed his last precisely at 4 p.m. on Christmas Day, 1861, while I stood picket on the banks of the Potomac.